Strange Horticulture is an occult puzzle game about collecting and cataloguing powerful plants. It's nice when a game's Steam description is accurate because then I don't have to think of anything new to say. In Strange Horticulture, you play as the sole proprietor of a local shop, the eponymous Strange Horticulture, in a rainy Victorian-era setting. While the theme sees you as a store owner, the gameplay doesn't revolve around that sort of management. Trivial ideas like money and profits are nowhere to be seen, and instead the game focuses on your craft and expertise as the local horticulturist, but in a way that, by the end, will make you feel more like a detective. Every day in Strange Horticulture, you'll get townsfolk turning up at your store to deliver letters, discuss strange goings-on, or more usually, request a specific type of plant to help with some activity or ailment. Finding this plant is the game's main consistent puzzle activity, because to give the patron the plant they've requested, you'll have to figure out which of the plants in your greenhouse that actually is. In your store is a book called Strange Plants that you will accumulate pages for over the course of the game, and each page describes in short, sweet fashion one individual plant next to a small illustration. If a customer wants a lemon dandy, you can find that page in the book and get some details on what you're looking for. From the picture, you're looking for a plant with a bushy flower, and from the text, you're looking for a plant with curled leaves. And from here, you can look through your wide assembly of flowers to find one that might fit. Making use of an in-game magnifying glass to examine visual details, or taking a closer inspection to gain another insight into the plant. Once you've matched a couple of details, you can hand the flower over with some confidence, and you can add tags to plants to remember them later. It's a simple idea and often a simple puzzle, but it is ultimately really quite engaging. It feels like something that could easily become quite repetitive, but Strange Horticulture does a great job of creating variety in the hints and clues that you'll use to track down your floral prey. It might be the visuals of a flower in the shape of a leaf, but sometimes the description is of little use and instead the quick scribbled drawing is the main identifier. Sometimes an entry contains an obvious bit of flavour text just filling out the page, and then actually that turns out to contain a crucial detail once you pick the plant out for further inspection. It would be too easy to just constantly use colours and shapes to describe the plants you need to look for, and while those details are used, it's the variety that keeps these more interesting. Every plant will have quite a lot of information about it, the visual information that you get from looking at it, and the text on the page, and the text that you get when putting it in for closer inspection. And for most of the plants, most of this information is never actually going to be used. Placing the lemon dandy in for closer inspection just describes its off-putting scent, but that actually doesn't help you at all. The details that are important and the writing that's just for flavour combine seamlessly, and it makes the puzzles feel really natural. Some pages in the book might even reference other pages, and so while identifying the plants never becomes difficult, you will often have to put a little bit of work in, and it is completely plausible to make an incorrect guess and add to the sense of rising dread. Throughout Strange Horticulture's 5 to 6 hour duration, identifying plants doesn't feel samey. Identifying plants is the larger half of Strange Horticulture's gameplay, but the detective-style puzzling takes place in one other area too. There is a world that exists, or is at the very least represented, outside of your shop and your town. Alongside your tome of strange plants, your desk will usually host a folded map of a slightly altered lake district in northwest England. If you want to study and collect a wide range of these unusual plants, then you'll also need to head out and find them. The region is split into square mile map coordinates, and the map shows a few named locations and light geographical details. This map is how you travel to other places by clicking a square, and if you travel to a place of importance or a site of a new plant, you'll get some details and descriptions in the customer panel of your shop. But finding new plants and interesting places isn't guesswork, it's more thematic, simple detective puzzle solving. You get hints about places to go from customers who visit, notes you find, and the clue cards handed out ominously by the game at the end of every day. Again, Strange Horticulture makes a simple puzzle idea work well by giving a lot of variation in the clues. You might be led to a specific map coordinate or be given directions from a place that you know. You might get a description of an area or a journey, and by surveying the map and looking at the landscape, figure out what place that refers to. The hints also range in specificity. When the story calls for it, you might be outright told of a town name to visit, creating a puzzle that's nothing more than tracking down a word on a map. But it can also be something fairly obscure that requires a little bit of thinking about. Again, you won't get bogged down in these puzzles, but you will feel like a detective just from the idea of what you're doing. And there are still some standout moments of revelation where I'd temporarily given up on a clue, and then saw or read something differently and instantly knew what I was doing wrong. Undeniably, what's best about Strange Horticulture is the overall sense of the theme. The sort of skeuomorphic design where a screen interface is designed to replicate real life is often terrible for user experience, but it has found a solid footing in immersive video games. There's a similar feel to Papers, Please, minus the depressing bleakness, where you have to interact with what's in front of you in such an involved way that it really puts you into the space. This is your shop, this is where you work, this is where I arrange my plants, and this is where I organise my stationery and tools and notes. Strange Horticulture is a narrative game, and it does well in that regard. The game's well-written characters and mysterious storylines allow the occult theme to flourish, and it really needs to, because the puzzles aren't abstract standalone features, they are so thematic that the game has to give them a good purpose. There's a great atmosphere from the audio and visuals. The shop you work in has a lot of character from the fitting green-brown colour scheme, the details on your tools and maps and notes, and the growing collection of plants swaying gently in front of the falling rain. In Strange Horticulture, it is always raining, and the sound of that heavy rain pairs really well with the mellow, atmospheric soundtrack. The puzzle of identifying plants is such an interesting idea. How many games put a challenge in front of you where your first thought is, I need my book and my magnifying glass? Identifying the plants is genuinely such a satisfying task and even leads to great moments of mastery. When a customer comes in looking for a certain flower based on a particular characteristic, and you already know what it is because you remember seeing that plant earlier. As the game goes on, you also start to make use of a few additional and intriguing tools, which gives Strange Horticulture a nice sense of progression. This really is a wonderful game. It's immaculately polished, and the main puzzle mechanic of identifying plants is really unlike anything else I think I've played. If you're aware of a game with a similar mechanic, let me know, because I do want to see how something like this might have been implemented elsewhere. The puzzles aren't challenging, but they are a fun challenge, which I think is the perfect level for a detective game. Because nothing kills detective gameplay like being stumped by a random unintuitive puzzle. It's something that's really fun to do, and the neatly crafted story draws you in even further. Strange Horticulture is about 5 to 6 hours long, and while there are multiple endings, I think it's a game that you would only play through once. And if you aren't big on reading a lot in your video games, then fair warning that a large chunk of Strange Horticulture is reading letters and conversations or details from your book. With enough Steam reviews to hit overwhelmingly positive, this has probably just about escaped that tag of hidden gem, but Strange Horticulture is absolutely worth playing as a game with a fun but unusual puzzle design, but also as a game that is relaxing and atmospheric. And with all of that in mind, I highly recommend that you copy what I did and give this game a try. What's a better way of saying that? Take a leaf out of my book.